As a teen in the early 2000s, I discovered anime, and my interest in it exploded rapidly due to the more mature feel and gritty tones that these shows possessed when compared to the Western cartoons of the time. After diving deep enough into the medium and forums to consider myself a fan, I found Fooly Cooly, or FLCL, whichever you prefer. The show was a bit too random and unfocused for my 13-year-old brain to digest it in any meaningful way. Having really only seen a handful of shows so far, which all took themselves quite seriously, my initial viewing of the show gave me the impression that it was pointless, excessive, and vapid. It felt like comedy just for the sake of comedy, even though below the surface it was resonating with me in a way that I really couldn't explain at the time. It wasn't until over a decade and a dozen rewatches later that I was finally able to explain why the show felt so important to me back then. What I had failed to grasp as a teenager and came to understand more recently in my life is that the show, despite the simple fun of it, used the development of its characters and the execution of its themes to show me the raw truth of maturity and what it means to be an adult. On a personal level, Takun was a representation of my cynical nature about the world around me. Also, we had this shared desire to become our respective concepts of an ideal adult. Simultaneously, Haruko presented the idea that growing up is more subjective than objective, and almost everyone in life has some innate level of immaturity somewhere inside of themselves, whether they show it or not. The show's inherent randomness never really seemed to bother me. Since that initial viewing, I was always in awe and wonder of how this OVA seamlessly blended art styles together, flowing from one style to the next when you're not really expecting it to. This was likely also the first time I saw intense stylization like this, used as a way to make a scene stand out from the others by keeping all the visuals constantly fresh and unique. Just by the presentation alone, this was the first time since my initial discovery of anime that my perception of what an anime could actually be began to increase exponentially. For all the things about the show that I could mention, nothing quite sticks out as brightly in my memory as this quote from Samejima Mamimi, well, more specifically from her cigarettes. Never knows best. This minor detail, I feel, sums up the show for me in 3 simple words that describe this idea. One which can easily be applied to the majority of the characters in the show as well. Like how Kamon, Naota's father, makes sexual advances towards Haruko which never seem to come to fruition. Another example would be how Commander Amuro never got to be with Haruko either when she led him on in the past. As a result, he now dons giant eyebrows, which he perceives as a giant shield of maturity to protect himself from her. Haruko herself fits into the phrase as well from the opposite side, since she used these characters to produce robots from Medical Mechanica for her own selfish reasons, which clearly never works out how she wanted it to either. What I think of when I hear these 3 words is a simple concept that I learned back then, on some subconscious level that continues to give those words weight for me even today. Basically, what we think is best for ourselves ultimately doesn't turn out to be so. Life doesn't go the way you plan sometimes, but it's how you handle these moments and how you persevere that shows your maturity. You see, this time in my adolescence, I was constantly trying to fill a void after losing my first serious relationship. I attempted to create hollow relationships with an increasing apathy toward each new one I fumbled into, likely hurting the person I left behind at the expense of trying to keep myself happy. These choices I made at the time I feel parallel the choices that Mamimi made throughout this entire story. After being left behind by Toskun, she responds by using his little brother as a replacement, no matter how much sexual frustration that's causing him. Eventually, when Naota starts to distance himself from her as well, she begins taking care of a cat instead, even transferring the nickname Takun from one to the other as her focus shifts between the 3 of them. By the time she's left to her own devices and begins losing her sanity a bit, she starts to take care of the terminal core, feeding it electronics and motorbikes until she loses control of the situation completely, much in the same way that I couldn't let go of my past and kept trying to find a Takun of my own to recreate the initial feeling of the relationship that I was chasing. When applying Never Knows Best to Naota, it feels at its strongest whenever he comes to the realization that Mamimi isn't actually in love with him, and he can't replace his brother even though she led him to believe that he had a chance to. Also, when he runs away with Haruko later, spending time with her homeless and free out on the road, By this point, he's already looking up to her as an adult, even falling for her as a replacement for his feelings for Mamimi. This immature adult alien has now changed his perception of maturity. Naota by this point has realized that he should put his feelings first, not to sacrifice his happiness to become this idealized grown-up that he thought he wanted to be. He can still be a kid, even if only on the inside. Finally, this brings me to the repeated imagery of baseball and swinging the bat which exists all over the show. By making Toskun a baseball player who has seemingly already grown up and left the country to pursue this dream, it constantly uses the metaphor of swinging the bat as a way for Naota to mature himself. Swinging the bat represents this idea of facing off against our sometimes unfair existence. This existence can be beyond our control, but our feelings and desires sometimes get pushed to the wayside because of it. Learning to swing the bat correctly is like a metaphor for being able to handle whatever life throws at you, and then knocking it out of the park. Even the first scene of the entire anime is Mamimi describing how to hit a home run properly. Even though this show is so short, this anime is full of little nuances like this, which helped me to expand upon my concept of growing up, helping me to realize that the only way to achieve maturity is to accept reality, and to do your best with the curveballs that are thrown at you. The immense feelings this show imbued within me has stuck with me even close to 15 years later, and I believe that no matter what, I'll always love this show, even if Season 2 and 3, which should be coming out pretty soon, turn out to be complete garbage. This show even got me interested in the idea of living in a city and driving a scooter around as my main means of transportation, which as of a year ago I have finally began to do. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching this short video of me attempting to analyze my deep feelings for this show. I'm finally getting into the swing of making analysis for anime on a blog, so keep looking out for more stuff from me in the near future. Once again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.